Hi, I'm Kim, and if you're new to sewing, one of the questions that you're going to come up against almost immediately is, how do I put thread onto a bobbin? Your sewing machine will not sew without thread in your bobbin. It just needs it for the bottom half of its stitching. So I'm going to show you in this tutorial how to put thread onto a bobbin, how to wind thread on a bobbin, and I'm going to show you on 3 different machines. Now, even if you haven't got one of the machines that I'm going to cover, it doesn't matter. I would encourage you to watch me wind the thread on the bobbin on the 3 different machines, because it helps build your confidence. And if you can build confidence in your sewing, that makes your whole sewing so much better. If you're sewing with confidence, if you know how to thread your machine, how to wind your bobbin, you can approach pretty much any machine with confidence, because they all follow the same kind of patterns, and that's what I'm trying to show you over these 3 machines. So we're going to cover a basic mechanical entry-level silver machine, and then we're going to cover 2 mid-range machines. One is a Janome and one is a brother. So watch out for those as they come along, but I would encourage you to watch all 3, because it gets the sequence in your mind, what you're looking for. So without further ado, let me move on and show you the first machine, which will be a silver. So the first machine I'm sat at is a silver electronic machine. It's quite a basic entry level machine. It's a pretty old machine. It was actually my very first sewing machine that I bought about 1,000 years ago. So, you know, it sort of probably predates historic times. So the first thing we need is a spool of thread. Now, the rule is, and this is the same rule for all machines. So when I go onto the Janome and the brother, this is the same rule applies for all machines, and it doesn't matter what your machine is, this is the same rule across all machines. So you have your spool of thread. The thread is going to come out from behind to the left. And that will be the same when you're threading the machine and when you're loading the bobbin. So I'm going to put this thread on my spool holder. Now on this particular machine, I've got an upright or vertical spool holder. And you'll see that there's 2 spool holders here. That's because this particular machine will do a twin needle stitch. We don't need to worry about that for this particular exercise, but we do need to put our thread on the right hand spool holder. So I'm going to do that. And you'll see that my thread is coming out from behind to the left. And then I'm going to go over to the left, and let me move my camera over so you can see where I'm going. So if you have a look on your machine, you're likely to see that you've got some little arrows and some solid lines and some dotted lines. So have a quick look at your machine and look at where those arrows are going, and where the solid line is going, and where the dotted line is going, because you'll have a solid line that tells you where the bobbin thread goes for winding the bobbin, and you'll have a dotted line or you'll have a line that tells you where the thread goes for when you're threading your machine. So in this particular instance, on this machine, the solid line here is telling me where I need to put the thread for winding up the bobbin. And generally, if you've got a little arrow that sort of goes off down in this direction, that's for threading the machine. And this little arrow here, which goes back in that direction, that's the one that tells me that I'm going to wind the bobbin, because the bobbin winder spool is over on the right, just off camera here, but we'll go over there in a moment. So the first thing the machine is telling me is that I need to put my thread underneath this little hook here and through this little hole. And with pretty much all machines, they'll have something like this, and you can just slide your thread underneath, and there was a little click there as it goes underneath that little hook. The next thing, which is really important, so I want you to find it on your machine, is that there's a little gear, and it's generally round, looks like that. Sometimes it's in different places, so I need you to find that for me. And we're going to go round this gear. Now, if you look at the instruction or the little arrow on top of the machine here, it says it needs to cross round this gear. And that is so it gets the right level of tension so that it winds your bobbin correctly. So I'm going to follow that instruction. I'm going to come round here, cross behind and go off. So I'm going to take my thread round and I'm going to wind it round the bobbin and it crosses over so that it goes back this way. So let me do that again. I'm going to go under the gear, wind it round and cross it over. All right. Then it says we need to go back this way. So let me move my camera, and I think I'm going to need to move my machine as well. So let's go all the way back here and move my machine over so that you can see the bit I'm looking at next, which is the the bobbin winder spindle, which is just here. And you will see to the right hand side of that, there's a little wheel here that you're going to push this spindle against. So let me show you how to do this next bit. So if I get my thread over here, and the next thing that we're going to do before we worry about this bit is put it on to the bobbin. Now, if you look at bobbins, you will see that they've got a little hole in them. So can you see there? There is a little hole. If you look at your bobbins closely, you'll find some holes. Could be one, could be two, could be three or four. It just depends on the make and the manufacturer of your bobbins. Now, I've got a sister video to this one. In fact, this is part of a little sequence of videos about how to deal with your bobbin, how to wind it up, how to load it, how to put it in various machines. And the video that I've already recorded, you will see, I'll put the link just down below this video, is Are Bobbins Universal? So do check that out because the answer is in there. And actually, don't tell anybody, but the answer is no, they're not universal. So you do need the right bobbin for your machine. So whatever the bobbin you've got for your machine, and in that video, I'll explain in full detail why that's important that you get the right bobbin for your machine. You will find that there are holes and we need to put our thread through that hole, but we need to come from the inside out. And I'm now going to attempt the impossible, attempt the impossible and do this with a camera in the way. So just bear with whilst I attempt this. So we're going to get our thread and we're going to go from the inside out through that hole. And I have to say it's also quite impressive because I haven't got my glasses on. So I think full congratulations are in order, quite honestly. And look, it's come out, so it's actually very easy to pull it back out. So let's get that through the hole like that. And I'm going to grab hold of that thread at the top there. And we don't want to be letting go of that because it very easily falls back through the hole. So now I've got it, I'm going to hold on to it for dear life. So can you see here then, my thread is coming through the hole. Let's get my image out of the way so you can see that thread is coming through the hole from the inside out. Now, if you look just below the winder spindle here, there's another little image of a bobbin saying that thread needs to go behind and the hole needs to be at about a 2 o'clock position if this was a clock. So that's what we're going to do next. We're going to hold onto this thread and we're going to put the bobbin on that winder spindle and click it down. You need to get a definite click in place. And then before you do anything else, the little hole where your thread is coming out of, just twizzle it round so it's at that 2 o'clock position. So the thread's coming out there and that matches my little image here. All right. Generally, I find that as long as you've got that little hole between a 12 o'clock position and a 2 o'clock position, you're pretty much good to go. But if the machine is saying 2 o'clock, I'm going to follow that. So I've got my thread coming out. The thread is coming from behind and going round. And then I'm going to click it into place against this little stop here, the white stop over on the right hand side. Now, a word about this little bit. Generally speaking, it depends on the machine, but generally speaking, once you've clicked your bobbin over to that right hand side, it disengages your needle and your feed dogs, so that when you are winding your bobbin, your needle doesn't go up and down and your feed dogs don't go round and round. If they are going up and down whilst you're winding the bobbin, they can go up and down pretty fast. That can be quite dangerous, and you really don't want to do that with your machine, particularly when nothing is sewing. So we don't want that to happen. So if we can disengage our needle, that should automatically disengage the needle. On some machines, and I couldn't tell you which machines, it will depend on your machine. So have a look at your manual. But generally the very basic machines, and also if you've got an original vintage machine, you will definitely have to do this. You will have to pull out the hand wheel. So the hand wheel is just over on the right hand side here. And if you pull that out, that'll disengage the needle and the feed dogs as well. So have a look at your machine manual to see whether you need to do that as well. And all you'll do is pull it out before you start winding the bobbin, and then push it back in again when you've wound the bobbin up. On this particular machine, I'm just going to tell you, this is, as I said, this is about 1,000 years old. It probably predates Stonehenge, and long ago it's stopped working. So on this machine, I am actually supposed to pull out the hand wheel to disengage the needle. And it doesn't do it anymore. This is a poor little machine, bless its little heart. And it, you know, it struggles on. I don't use it anymore. It was my very first machine. The poor little thing. So you are going to get the noise whilst I show you the bobbin. You are going to get the noise of the needle going up and down. That's just because this machine has kind of reached its point of no return, and I just hold on to it for kind of emotional reasons, and it makes good demonstration. So on your machine, especially if it's a relatively new machine, you'll probably find that as you've clicked that bobbin over to the stop, it will have disengaged your needle. So now we're going to do two things before we start winding the bobbin, and I'm going to show you these two things because you're going to fall into a couple of issues if you don't. So the first thing is hold on to this tail of thread, and I've probably got, I don't know, 2 or 3 inches there of thread. There's a couple of inches of tail of thread that I'm going to hold on to. The reason for that is when we start winding the bobbin, that thread either, if I'm not holding on to it, could fall back out of that hole again, and you probably already have seen how easy it is for the thread to fall back out of the hole, so we don't want that to happen. But that's the least of our worries, because the other thing that could happen is if we're not holding onto that thread, it could get caught down here, so in the actual bobbin itself. So when your thread is winding onto the bobbin, you could find that this tail gets caught in and gets caught up with that thread. Now, because you are winding at speed, and it doesn't matter how slow you go, it's still winding at speed, you'll find that that tail gets caught up really quickly and you'll be unable to stop it. Now, if you go ahead and put that bobbin into your machine and start sewing with it, that's going to cause problems down the line, because when you're sewing, your needle will potentially pick up on the wrong bit of thread. It will pick up on this tail, not the thread in the bobbin. And you really don't want that to happen. That can cause all manner of problems with your machine. So we need to avoid that one. And then the other thing that will happen, and I know it happens a lot because my students tell me, is that the thread can get caught around that spindle underneath the bobbin, and that can be a complete and utter nightmare when you're trying to untangle that, particularly if it gets right down into the mechanism there. So you really don't want that to happen. So this is something I tell all of my students, and I'm going to tell you now is my little tip for stopping this to happen. Really simple. You're going to think it's a complete genius, and that's you use your finger and you're going to stick it underneath the thread. So as the thread is coming in to the bobbin, let me just reposition the camera just a little bit so you can see a bit more. There you go. So as the thread is winding onto the bobbin, if you put your finger under the thread just for the first few turns, it'll stop it getting caught underneath. Genius, hey? So we're going to start winding the bobbin. So I have got hold of my little tail here, and I'm going to grip onto that. If you hold it loosely, it will get grabbed out of your hand and it will sort of disappear and get caught up around there. So hold onto it tightly just for the first few turns and keep your finger underneath that thread. Just slide it underneath. It doesn't hurt, I promise. You won't feel anything. So just stick your finger underneath there, and then we're going to start pressing your foot pedal to start winding on to the bobbin. So, and just bear with the noise that's going to happen, because as I said, this is an old machine and the needle does go up and down on it. So, whoops, can you see that I let go of that and how easy it is for that to disappear? Fortunately, hadn't gone very far. Let me just check. And actually, this is really good that I've shown you this. Can you see that came out of my hand and it's unthreaded from the bobbin? I am really pleased that that's happened. And I'll tell you for why. And as I do this across all my lessons and my courses, I will show you when things go wrong, because they do. It happens to all of us all the time. So let me do that again. Fortunately, it didn't get caught anywhere. So it's okay. It's come unthreaded. We're going to click that over to the left. I'm going to re-thread the bobbin. Oops. Let's get the thread up, which is really difficult to do with the camera in the way. And you know, I like showing you things real time, because this is what happens in real life. All right, so I'm going to put a whole round to the 2 o'clock position, click it over to the right. This time I'm going to hold on to it a little bit tighter, put my finger under the thread and start pressing my foot pedal. Now it's done a few turns on there, so I can get my finger back out of there now, because it's unlikely to get caught on the spindle. Just do another few turns and you can see what happens is this thread is going to go down and up. If you watch it, it goes down and up, and then it stays up and it goes down. But as I've done a few turns, I can now snip off this tail here. And it can really go quite short. There's a tiny little bit left there, but now there's nothing to get caught up, nothing to come loose, nothing to come unstuck anywhere. And now I can just keep my foot pedal down until that bobbin has wound all the way through. I'm not going to load a full bobbin onto here, but I can promise you pretty much your machine will stop when that bobbin is full, and I will show you that on one of the other machines. So this is a basic electronic machine, and I'm now going to show you on a Janome next to show you how that is very similar. As I said, I want you to build your confidence on loading bobbins, winding the bobbins up on all types of machines, so you can see the similarity of it. Helps you build your confidence for sewing. So I'll see you in just 1 second. So here we are at the Janome then, and this is a computerized machine now. And we're going to approach it in the same way, but this time you'll notice that the spool holder is horizontal, and that's absolutely fine. It's unlikely to go all the way up. It just depends on the machine as to where it moves, but this horizontal position is where this machine is. So we're going to get our thread, but this time, instead of our thread coming from behind to the left, we're going to put it from behind, but now from underneath. So if it was upright, you can see that that thread would go out to the left. So on this machine, you can see here that I've got a little diagram, and it says, put the spool of thread on your thread holder. The thread's coming out from underneath and it's going off to the left, which is where we're going to go next. So let me move my camera over, and you can see over here we've got another one of these little gears that we saw on the last machine. So you can see here it says you want to put that thread round and bring it round that gear and then go off to the bobbin spindle. And if you remember from the last machine, it wanted us to cross it over to get the tension. On this particular machine, it doesn't need us to cross that thread. We're just winding or bringing the thread around the gear. But when we look at this gear, we need to look at it carefully, because the gear is a couple of discs or a couple of plates. I'm sure there's official names for it, with a little disc in the middle. Normally, if I do this kind of thing and my husband is watching, he's an engineer, and he then tells me what all these things are called. But for the purposes of us, there is a little bit in the middle, and that's where we want to put our thread underneath. So I'm going to get the thread here, and I'm going to bring it round this gear and under the central disc. So it's in the middle of the gear. So if you imagine it's like a hamburger with two parts of the bun and then the burger bit in the middle, it will fit underneath the burger, if you like, for want of an analogy. So it sits underneath there, and you can feel straight away that there's a little bit of tension on that. And we want that on all machines. We're looking for this gear to get a little bit of tension. And then it says here, you need to go over to the right to the bobbin winder spindle. So let's do that. Oops, wrong way. Okay, and I probably just need to move this machine a bit more into view for you. Okay. And then if you look over here, it doesn't tell me what to do over on this part, but let me tell you what to do. We're going to treat it in pretty much the same way as we did with the bobbin in the previous section. So I'm going to get my bobbin that is correct for this machine. So this is a Janome bobbin. You can see that it's got the holes in the top and the bottom of the bobbin. And this time, as before, we're going to pop the thread from the inside out. So let me just do that whilst trying to battle with the cameras. Okay, so we're coming from the inside out there. I'm going to grab hold of that so it doesn't escape. And you remember I said in the last section of this video that our little hole with the thread goes between like 12 o'clock and 2 o'clock. We want to do that the same here. So we're clicking it down onto that spindle. If I shut up just for a moment, you can hear that click. That's what you're after. And we're going to put that little hole round to about 2 o'clock. And then the same as before, I'm going to click it over to the right hand side, over to that little white stop. And actually on my LCD display, which is just off the bottom of the camera here, the image has changed to tell me that the bobbin is being wound, and I now need to depress my foot pedal, which is what I would do. So it would be the same thing. So as I click over, that has disengaged my needle and my my feed dogs. I'm going to do exactly the same. I'm going to hold on to this thread. I'm going to pop my finger underneath there for the first few turns, and I'm going to start pressing the foot pedal down so that it will start winding. Okay, and as I've started to put a few turns on there, then I can snip this thread here, and then I can press the foot pedal again and get that wound on properly. I'm not going to do it on this machine, and I'll tell you for why. It's because I borrowed this machine and it hasn't got a spool cap. What's a spool cap? I will show you on the next machine, but if I just show you over here, can you see what's happened to that spool of thread? Even just doing a couple of turns, it's come off to the end of that the spool holder here. And if I if I put my foot pedal down and start running this at speed, that is going to fly off. I can assure you. So, oh, excuse me. Normally, what we'd always want is to have a spool holder, a spool cap, just sitting on here, and that would stop that flying off. But I haven't got one for this machine. I've borrowed it and I actually need to test it. So it's going to be quite interesting without a spool cap, and I don't have a Janome one. So that's on this machine. So let me move on to the brother, which is my own machine, and let me show you that one, and then we'll wind up a full bobbin and I'll show you how the machine stops it automatically. So give me 1 second, as if by magic, through some very magic video. So I've now got my brother here, and again we can see where we've got our bobbin instructions. So I've currently got the lid down, and if you look on here, it tells me what my instructions are for the bobbin. It tells me on top, but it also tells me underneath as well. So it tells me again that I've got to go through this little gear. So do you remember from the last two sections we're looking for a gear? So let me open up the top here and just pan in just a little bit over on the left here, and we can see that we've got this little gear again that we want to aim for. But this time my spool holder is here. It's a horizontal spool holder, but it's sitting underneath this gear. The gear is not over to the left like the Janome and the silver. It's actually sitting just above. But I've got a little place to go to. So if you look at, so we've got the instruction here. If you look, it says the thread's coming over from the left around the gear, around this gear here, before it goes onto the spindle, the winder spindle over here. So from my spool holder here, I've got to go over to the left. Now, if I pan my camera over a little bit, move my machine so that you can see all these things all in one go, you will see again that we've got some arrows and some dotted lines to tell us where to go. So again, have a look at your machine and see where you've got these arrows to tell you where to go. If I just reposition that a little bit, you can see that it says here, so on this particular machine, the dotted line, and it's given me a clue over on this instruction here, with the dotted line tells me it's going off to the bobbin. So if I'm looking over here and looking at for the dotted line, it says, okay, number one, come off from this spool holder here and then pop round here, bring the thread round underneath this hook, up to the other side, and then the second thing I've got to do is go over to this gear here. And that's where this little instruction picks up. So number 3 says it needs to go round this little gear and off to the bobbin over here. So, or off the winder spool. So I'm going to start here with my spool holder, and exactly the same thing again. I'm going to get my thread, and I'm making sure that the thread is coming out from underneath. All right, so it's coming from behind and it's underneath, and I'm going to pop that on my spool holder. And on my machine here, I do have a little spool cap, so I want to put that in place to stop my spool flying off. When you put these spool caps on, you don't need to jam it up against, because otherwise it won't turn very easily. I'm just bringing it out very, very slightly to allow my spooler thread to turn around. So having got that, then it's saying, so number 1, I need to go off over here. So let's just get the camera going back again so that you can see. Okay. So my thread is saying, sorry, my instructions are saying go round here, so underneath, then I'm dropping down underneath this particular hook here, I'm coming up the other side, and then it says go over to this gear here. So before I do that, let me just bring this camera back so you can see. So if you look at the instructions over here, can you see that that thread, it comes round from behind and in front of the gear this time? So let me just tip the machine so you can see a little bit further. So look over on the right hand side of your screen where my seam rip is pointing, and I've got the thread coming up, it's coming behind this hook here, and then it's coming round behind the gear and in front. So it's going behind the gear here and in front. So that's different from the other two machines. So generally what it's always saying is that you need to hook it around that gear in some capacity. So that with the silver it did a little crossover in the front. With the Janome it came from one way, came round the back and went out the front again. And on this brother is coming from behind and going around the front. But all of them, we're just going underneath that little disc there, so it gets the tension. So I'm going to bring that thread round, try not to get my hand in the way. So it's going behind this hook here and then behind the gear, because that's what it wants me to do over on these instructions here. It's going behind the gear and then in front, and I'm getting underneath that little disc in the center there. Okay, so if I give that, I'm just holding on to the left and just giving it a little tug so it sits underneath that gear, so it gets that tension, which is what we're after. I'm going to let go for 1 second so I can reposition my machine so that you can see. And then this time we're good to go again. So we've got our bobbin, which is right for a brother machine. I've got my thread. I'm going to thread from the inside out through one of those little holes. I'm going to grab hold of that thread. I'm going to put it on my little spindle here and make sure that that little hole is up at the midnight or 2 o'clock position, somewhere up there. I'm holding onto the thread and I'm going to click it over to the right hand side. So let me just do that again. So I've threaded the thread from the inside out. That's the rule for all machines. I'm popping it onto the winder spindle here, clicking it down so you hear that click, and I'm pushing it over to the left, making sure that that hole is at the sort of 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock position. All right. Now on this brother, I'm just telling you, it does say you can put it underneath one of these little catches underneath. I've never bothered. I just do the same thing for all machines, and as I hold on to my thread, and I'll put my finger underneath the thread for the first few turns to stop it disappearing down into the mechanism and winding around the spindle. So I'm going to hold on to that for the first few turns. On this machine, again, when I've clicked it over to the left, that disengages my needle and my feed dog. So I'm going to start turning. I've done a few turns. I can snip off that thread. I do not need to put my finger underneath anymore because it will wind fine. And I'm going to wind this right to the end so that you can see when the machine comes to a stop. So I've got it on maximum speedy. And you know, we're going to sit back and we're going to have a bit of a coffee whilst this is winding for its few seconds. Is this hypnotic watching the bobbin wind up? But I want to show you this because it will start making a sound. My spool's running out of thread, can you see? Okay, well, it's not going to stop because the spool ran out of thread. But when that's getting to full, which it just was about to get to its full part, it will start slowing down and stopping. And it will stop of its own accord. And as soon as you've stopped, then ordinarily, if you hadn't run out, you would snip the thread here. I know it's all gone on there, but you would snip the thread here. You would click that over to the left, take off your bobbin, and then you are ready to load your bobbin into your machine. And I will cover all that in the next video. So check down below here for the link. It just depends when you've watched this because it will be out in a few days time, but if the link is down here, then you can watch that video next. So hope that has been helpful in how to get your thread wound onto a bobbin on different types of machines and knowing what to look out for so you can build your confidence in loading bobbins on all manner of machines. So if this has been helpful, please do like and subscribe. Just click the links down below and I will see you very soon in the next video. Bye for now and hope it's been helpful. Bye.